All right, welcome to the Experienced Mama Roundtable session. I have three of our five that was supposed to be here already here. One could not make it, but we're going to get started shortly here. And the reason I wanted to put this roundtable together was so that I know other experienced mamas are talking about this, but kind of not out in public all the time. Although my guests today are in the same space of helping moms and babies and moms in general. So they're used to talking about this, and that's why I asked them to come on. And I think it is so important that we talk about the reality of the postpartum period in the first year of motherhood, because as a first-time mom, even coming from a medical background, I was still shocked by a lot of things that happened. And, the more you know ahead of time, the more you can prepare in a way that's not like prepare yourself, like brace yourself, but really set yourself up so that it's not such a shock and you can get yourself the support that you need. So without further ado, I want to just have each of you introduce yourselves, and then we'll go around and, well, actually, why don't we do this? I have a list of questions. So after you introduce yourself, go ahead and answer the first question, which I'm going to ask right now. Let's see here. Sorry, guys. Okay, fine. It's like trivia, postpartum trivia. So please introduce yourselves and then answer, what did you think postpartum was going to look like? So let's start with you, Julie. Can you tell everybody what you do? Because everyone here is in the similar space. And so just tell us a little bit about what you do, and then go ahead and answer that first question.
Hi, yeah, so thank you for having me, Callista. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Julie Fernandez. I'm an occupational therapist by training and also a hand therapist, and I'm a mom of 3 kids. I'm kind of newly postpartum, I guess, with number 3 because she's 10 months old. So it's in my world all the time. I run a blog called The Beanbag Cafe with Julie, a podcast and a blog with Julie Fernandez in it. And that's basically just like sitting down with moms talking about things that I feel like are not being talked about. So I think a lot of the same stuff that Callista speaks about. I also have an Instagram where I just, talk about the realities of motherhood, but also how you can empower yourself and work on your environment and your mindset so that motherhood is not so miserable, but a lot more meaningful. And specifically talking to moms also that don't necessarily have that inbuilt village. A lot of people maybe have family members, or they're kind of born into a community where they have a lot of help postpartum, but that was not really my experience because I moved away from my family. I'm originally from South Africa. And so I think that's another element, another challenge that I kind of speak about. And then in terms of answering your question, what did I expect postpartum to look like? I don't think I really had a great idea. I don't know how other people feel, but I wasn't around babies, in any serious way until I had my own one. And so I think I had a very romantic idea of what it was like to have a baby, kind of what the media sells us, all the cute little outfits and the cuddles and the sweet baby sleeping and that kind of stuff. And there are elements of that for sure, but it's not all rainbows and bunnies. So yeah, we'll get into, what it was actually like, I'm sure. But I think I was kind of sold this romantic view of postpartum, and that wasn't the case. Yeah, so that's, I think it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, for sure.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, Julie. For people who move away, so many people move away from their families after college, and then they're alone. And talk about not having your village when your immediate family is not around, right? And so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's have Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie, can you introduce yourself and then tell us what you thought postpartum was going to be like.
Yeah. Thank you also, Callista. I'm really excited to be here. Like I was saying, I think this is just such an important mission. And so happy to be a part of this discussion this evening. So yeah, I'm Stephanie. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. I don't remember if you said we should say where we are geographically. That's something I always do. I like to know where everyone is in the world. And I'm a mom of two. So Julie, we've got in common both 10-month-olds. And then I have a little boy who's turning 3 in about a week. So lots of excitement here in the house right now. And I am a mindset coach for moms. I spent a lot of time, like the last year and a half or so, helping moms start their businesses. And I still do that, but I'm really moving into the role of empowering and helping all moms who are looking to work on self-trust, operating from their inner knowing, their intuition, rather than looking externally for validation. I think often in motherhood, we can get lost, lose our identities, and sort of feel fragmented. So helping those women who are seeking that next chapter and putting that focus back on themselves and getting in the mindset to be able to do so. And I have a membership community too for creatives and entrepreneurial minded moms to network, grow, and learn from niche experts who are in that like business and creative space. And so for what I was expecting, it's postpartum. With my first son, my mom had postpartum depression with me. And I've always struggled somewhat with depression and anxiety in a mild to moderate kind of way through my life. And so I felt like for sure if my mom had it and I had struggles, with mental health at certain times, that I would for sure have postpartum depression. And so in a way, that first experience was tinged in the sense that I sort of kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I kept thinking like, it felt actually like ethereal having my son. And I was a teacher for many years. So I had not a romantic vision. I was like, this is going to be hard. This is going to be life-changing. My identity is going to shift. I'm not going to have time for myself. I'm not going to have sleep. So I was anxious about those things for sure. And then anxious about falling into despair and depression. And that didn't really happen until I had to go back to work. I really struggled with that, leaving my first son, and that prompted me to start my own business. And then with my second son, it was different because I was nervous of how that would shift the relationship with my first son, the birth of my second. But because I had such a glowy, romantic reality of having my first son, I, through my fear, kind of just felt like, but my heart will grow, like everyone says. And so, like, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be perfect. And then I had my second son, and it wasn't. I had a really different experience. And so, yeah, it was just interesting how the different narratives played into my expectations and how in each case it was different from what I expected.
Thank you for sharing that, Stephanie. And yeah, and I'm glad you're feeling better. You shared that you are just now getting back to feeling like you're okay. And you did what you had to do to feel better. And I think that's, you talking about that publicly or out loud is so helpful to many moms, especially first-time moms. And I had a similar experience, like experiencing postpartum. It was very mild, but it was still a shock, just like you, because it was my third time. And I was like, oh, what is this? Actually, my husband noticed it, not me. So did you notice it, or like, did you pick that up right away?
I did. And the other thing is I wasn't expecting this either, but I ended up with postpartum thyroiditis. So I developed first hyperthyroidism and then hypothyroidism. It swings into with postpartum. And so weight gain, brain fog, puffy face, forgetfulness, depression, like all of these things. So I noticed like a few months after having my son, also he had he had really bad severe reflux and milk protein allergy. So that I think fed into the depression and anxiety, where I was just totally sleep deprived and he was crying all the time. And then the thyroid stuff hit. And so I sort of thought, well, it's all of that. You sort of make these excuses, I want to say, where I was like, oh, it's not depression. It's that my son had these troubles. And now that he's better, and now I have this thyroid stuff going on. So I'll wait till the medication kicks in for that and takes care of my hormones, and then I'll feel better. And, it was several months. And I was like, even if this is just my thyroid, like I need something more than what the supports that I had in place. But yeah, it was definitely noticed all around, but I was the one to bring it up and say things to my husband and and introduce the topic to those around me.
Mm-hmm. Well, good for you for being aware. Great. All right. Let's have Ashley. Hey, Ashley. I'm gonna take this off.
Hi.
Hi, Ashley. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Callista, for having me and for doing this. It's amazing. I wish I had access to hearing other moms talk about their experiences. So I'm Dr. Ashley Hokut. I'm a pelvic floor physical therapist, and I help moms both prepare for birth and heal postpartum in person in my practice. And then also virtually, I have a birth prep program that is designed to help just kind of educate and train moms to have an easier and smoother birth. Really, from the pelvic floor standpoint is where it really started. And then it became like more like a little bit broader, like mind body, because you really can't disconnect the mind and the body. So I pulled all of that together. With that, you can find me on Instagram at Ashley Hokut. And that's kind of the gist of who I am. And I have two girls. They are 9 and 10 years old. And for what I thought postpartum was going to be like, I really had no idea. I mean, I'm in New York. I moved from Florida. I didn't have a whole lot of my own friends up here in New York. So maybe a little bit similar to Julie, but not exactly. I kind of had my husband's friends because he's from the area and his family was here, but not mine. And so I didn't really know much. My sister had a kid. And so I had a nephew that I babysat for a few hours, but I never was really around babies all that much. So I didn't really have that much of an expectation of anything. I just thought I'm going to bring this little thing home, this little baby, and I'm going to dress it up real cute and change its diaper and feed it, and everything's going to be fine. We're just going to figure it out. I had books that I read and I went to classes, learn how to swaddle and learn how to do whatever. But man, I just I don't know. I thought projectile spit up was normal. And because I didn't know better. Yeah. You talked about, right? Stephanie, now she's gluten-free and dairy's not great for her, but I didn't know anything and I had no expectations of anything. I really just kind of was trying to go with the flow, but the flow, I didn't have a flow. There's no flow. I didn't know anything, I just kind of went with it, and just as things popped up, tried to figure it out, maybe ask some people in mommy groups, and I was just exhausted and not really good at taking care of myself and feeding myself and caring for a baby. So I thought I learned stuff, but I don't think I learned all the things that I should have prepared myself for to just bring this new baby home and take care of myself. Whether or not the whole postpartum depression or anxiety, I didn't even know if that was even a possibility, I just thought everyone's exhausted, everyone's frustrated, their baby is spitting up and not sleeping and crying. And that was my experience with the first one. The second one for me was actually easier because even though I was scared like to death to have a second baby when I had a not even 1-year-old, like a little one. I actually hired like an additional helper to just be present, and just having like someone present was helpful, and having some type of an experience prior for me was really helpful. But yeah.
I think you said something, the way that you said it, what you expected, or you were just going to go with the flow. And you had all the baby things and you read a few books.
Yeah.
And so that was like all baby preparation, right? And what I tell the mamas in the workshop and generally to all pregnant mamas is there's a difference between getting ready for your baby. And then there's a difference between that and getting ready to be a new mom.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Separate things.
Yeah.
And people aren't aware of that. I mean, I wasn't either. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it's like, you need to know that that's a different thing, right? Preparing yourself versus preparing for your baby.
Yeah.
And so let's do the second question. You kind of touched on it. What was the biggest shock to you as a new mom? And you had them back to back, just like me.
Mm-hmm. Should I continue to tell you the shock? Because
and we'll go backwards.
I think the biggest shock was like just like reminding me that I'm still important. Like I still need to take care of myself. I need to like feed myself. And like there were these things, like if my mom wasn't here with me for the first few weeks, like I don't even know if I would have eaten food. Like I was so like this baby, but so I think the biggest shock was that I'm a physical therapist. I like am so in tune with my body, my physical self. Like I take care of myself. I was doing yoga and I was eating really well. I did this insane cleanse like right before I got pregnant. And like, I mean, I thought I was pretty good at like self-care and like taking care of me. And then I had a baby and I had no idea how to take care of myself. I didn't even think like couldn't go to the bathroom without a baby on my breast. I couldn't like showering was like, I don't know how to do this. Like feeding myself. Like I wish I would have had food prepared. Like there's so many shockers that came about. It was like a complete identity shift. Like I like got lost and I felt like I was never going to find myself again. And it was, not everyone has this experience, thank goodness, but it was very challenging for me. And I almost like wish I had like a new mom coach, like somebody to be there to be like, you're okay. You're doing everything okay. Like just like a nice little angel by my side. Cause I felt like I was doing everything wrong and nothing was right. And yeah, I think for me it was like, since I'm a physical therapist, the biggest shocker was like, I went from like, I knew how to take care of myself to like, I don't know how to take care of myself and a baby, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You think that, yeah, I that is a shock. I'm pretty good at self-care, like before babies, hair, nails, working out, spending, giving myself what I want for the most part. And then you throw in a baby and it's like, oh my God, how can I do both at the same time? I think that is a common shock. And you say that not a lot of people experience, or most people, it's not a common experience, but I actually think it's really common that people just don't talk about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's not spoken about. Like I thought everyone had picture perfect postpartum times that I knew, and I didn't know a lot of other people, but the people I knew, it's like I think now it's even harder with the Instagram and everything. And you think like you're a failure if you're not like, your life isn't looking like other people's are. We're like, I have my baby and like, look at everything perfect. And it's
and all the filters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had like a receding hairline and I was just like, just like, yeah, everything was just crazy. So
the hair, the baby, that was one of my shockers, was like all the hair falling off after, all the hormones are done shifting. And I was like, I would like rather have another baby than lose my hair. Like the baby hairs drove me crazy. Or I said I would rather go through childbirth again than have deal with this like hair situation for like a year. All right. Well, thank you, Ashley. We'll go backwards now, or we'll go back to the front. Julie, so what was the biggest shock to you as a new mom?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about is my husband and I, we never really argued before we had a baby. And then I feel like we just had a lot of things to not disagree on. I think we were just both so tired and just grouchy. And I think like we both just didn't really know what we were doing. I don't know. It was a combination of like, yeah, this feels very natural and intuitive. And then at the same time, like, I don't know, like there was just lots of like, I remember having these moments where you're like, wow, this is the first time in my recent life where I feel like really flawed as to what to do. Like there were certain decisions I was just like, or certain things that my child would do, or I don't really know what the right answer is. And feeling that sort of lack of control, if you're like a type A personality, is very, discombobulating is, I guess, the right word. Yeah, I think you cannot imagine what the tiredness and the fatigue is like. Like even now going back, like imagining myself in a newborn phase, it's so hard to really embody that fatigue until you've experienced it. So like, you have an idea you're going to be, babies don't sleep and you're going to be sleep deprived. But I think having that compounded day after day after day, really, it changes your personality even. You're just not the same person when you're like a shell of yourself because you haven't been sleeping. So I think that really impacted me. I think it just really, the whole thing schooled me on like how important the basics are. Like we're talking about, like Ashley's talking about feeding herself, like basic things that you think, like I'm an OT, I should know about the life skills and all this kind of, like the same vibe, we're like self-sufficient functioning people. And then you throw in a little baby and you're like, how can this tiny little thing that can't like even move take over so much, of your life? It's a very humbling experience, so like the basics, like not sleeping, not eating, not just being quiet or just thinking. And then also just you comment, as you brought up the social media thing. And I almost think, I mean, maybe we'll get to this, but like, I think social media is like, should maybe be like with a heavy precaution / banned for the first like little bit when your hormones are like crazy, because even if you know that this is just people's highlights, I think something subconscious in your mind just can't help but compare yourself to these moms that have filters on them. And, like, I don't think it's healthy. Just the way that social media is portrayed. Like if we are portraying real motherhood, like I think Calista is trying to cultivate, and what we're doing on our own platforms, that's one thing. And I think people are really searching for that without even maybe even realizing that they're looking for it. But just the sort of influencer type of portrayal of motherhood, I think can be quite damaging mentally. So, and I think also another shocker is just how much of this is mindset, because you are going to be thrown all these curveballs, and it's how you take care of your mind and how you manage how calm you are. All this kind of stuff is going to really impact your experience as a postpartum mom, or just as a mom in general, like as the years go by,
Right. That's so true, Julie. Like, I feel like everything that is good for you in life, like, is intensified. Like, of course, mindset is great. Of course, being healthy, taking care of yourself. Yeah, we all try to live that way, but you need to do that 10 times, or it requires like 10 times the effort and energy to do it in the postpartum period, because you are exhausted, you are healing from pregnancy and childbirth. And so I think that's the difference, right? Because why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to do the normal things, like basic functioning daily activities like showering and eating? And that was a shock to me too. So thank you for that. I'm gonna have Stephanie answer that same question. What was the biggest shock to you as a new mom, Stephanie?
So Ashley shared that she's a pelvic floor physical therapist, which I'm now very well acquainted with. That was Big shock after my first son. I think I thought of all of the things during childbirth, like tearing. That was like my big fear, oh, I don't want to get an episiotomy. I don't, if anything's going to happen, I want to tear naturally. And I don't want to tear. Like that was my fear of stitches and that, I didn't know that something called prolapse exists where you can, there are different types of prolapse and I won't go into all of the details, but basically, I would definitely suggest preparing your pelvic floor for delivery. I was crowning with Bruce, my first son, for like nearly an hour. And it was just, they kept being like, one more push. And I pushed. And then it was like, no, he was kind of like, yeah. So it put a lot of strain on my pelvic floor and my muscles. And this was something like I didn't even think would like have a lasting effect. And postpartum, I know I was swollen, right? Like would hear from the midwives or they'd check on you and like, yeah, you're healthy. Everything's looking fine down there. But like, there's some significant swelling, just use ice, do this, do that. And I just kind of knew something was off though. Like, a couple weeks in, I still could barely, I could barely sit up in bed. I just like felt funny sitting. And there's different levels of prolapse where literally you can have parts of your body, like your vagina, your different parts coming out of you. I didn't have that degree. It was like between a first and second, I think, level. So like I had the sensation of heaviness. Like if I was standing, I would just feel really fatigued in my pelvic floor. And yeah, it's hard to describe, but I was embarrassed and that was one thing I didn't know how to talk about it. And I thought it was just part of having a baby. Like, wow, this is really brutal, like way more brutal than I thought. You're waiting for the stitches to heal and all of that, like wherever you were tearing, but then there's also like the ligaments and the muscles. So not to just terrify people even more, because it's scary, but there are ways you can protect yourself and you can arm your body and get it ready for what it's about to go through. And had I known that, and it's not just do 20 Kegels, do 100 Kegels, there are really targeted, specific, directed ways that you can support your muscles. And it's not just Kegels, it's lunges, it's breathing, it's all sorts of things. So I would follow Ashley and Expecting and Empowered. There's different Instagram accounts, if that's how you like to consume information, that I think would be really helpful in preparing yourself for that. And it was 6 months postpartum that I finally started seeing a physical therapist, and it changed everything for me. So I would really recommend looking into that. And then the other big shock I would think is worth mentioning is the one thing I thought that would happen that didn't is that I'd have all these friends around that would have their babies and we would like do this together. And I have friends that are having babies around the same time, but we're not doing it together. I'm pretty flexible, like about packing up our kids and going places, especially pre-COVID. But our friends really were rigid, and everyone has to do what is best for them and their family. So following your routines and your schedules in ways that serve you and your children best. But that like really sucked that nobody else was willing to pack up and sacrifice a nap or do the nap on the road or have put their kids to sleep somewhere else and pack them in the car, because it was then up to us if we wanted to have a social life to make all the sacrifice. And we kind of stopped doing it after a while. And then COVID hit too. And it felt and feels lonely sometimes, where it's just like, okay, I thought I'd be going to the park with my friends, or we'd do zoo days, or we'd come over to each other's houses. And that's just not really happened. So, yeah, that was a big surprise for me as well on the more like social emotional side of things.
Thanks, Stephanie. On our day 4 of this workshop, I talked about skills, and there's so many skills you learn as a new mom, right? Things you've never done before that you need to learn and get good at really fast. But I wanted to focus on the postpartum self-care and really painted a picture of all the stuff people don't share, the constipation, the vaginal soreness and all that stuff. And I talked about pelvic floor and the importance of it, because a lot of people don't know about this. So I know Ashley has a few things she probably wants to throw in there, maybe about prolapse or just a good word for pelvic floor preparation. You want to chime in, Ashley?
Oh man. I mean, there's so much. This is why I'm a pelvic floor physical therapist. Let's start with that. Like, I was not a pelvic floor physical therapist before I had my first or second kid, really. I was specializing in ortho. And even then, after I had an episiotomy and tore, and my recovery was very challenging and painful. Like, just walking to the toilet, I was like in tears. And I had natural vaginal births, so unmedicated. So I would say my like pain tolerance is pretty good, but I struggled, and I think it was just really hard. So like, anyways, it brought me into the pelvic floor world. And now I'm like, why does every mom not do pelvic floor physical therapy prior to childbirth? And why does not everybody go after, no matter what? Like, I don't care if you're in pain or not, your pelvic bones shift during childbirth. That is how your baby comes out. If you're having a vaginal delivery, and if you had a C-section, that's a major surgery. Nobody would have like an ACL like surgery and just go back on the field and play or figure it out on their own. How do you get stronger? Like, it just doesn't happen. So why is it not happening for what moms go through? Because it's like very physical to go through childbirth. It's very in your head, mental, mind too. And what I find a lot for moms going into birth is like, they've never worked on gaining a connection and like a really clear awareness of their pelvic floor. It's like this cavernous place that nobody talks about. It's so taboo. Don't say vagina or anus, because it's like, I don't know. And, so like, people don't know about this part of their body. I'm a physical therapist. I didn't know about all that part of my body either. Like, I could say I'm embarrassed to say that, but we didn't learn about it when I was in physical therapy school, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, however long ago that was. And so like, I had to specialize in it to learn about it. So how can I expect like someone who's not even in the field of knowing muscles and bones and ligaments to know about this part of their body? So if childbirth is a time when your baby or pregnancy, it's like there's more demands on your pelvic floor, you should learn about your pelvic floor. You should learn how to like support it and use your strengths during your pregnancy so that you're well supported. And then also learn how to like release and let go and open, because that's necessary for birth. And yeah, I mean, I could talk about this forever, and I don't want to go spend your whole time talking about it, but it's just like luckily more people are like learning about it, but it just needs to be spread. Like, the word for sure needs to be spread. And there's countries where every postpartum mom does go for pelvic floor physical therapy, just not in the United States. We're well behind on care for moms. I'm sure most people are aware of that. But yeah, I mean, again, it's like, it's a big experience, birth, right? No matter, again, C-section or vaginal. And so getting everything like realigned, reconnected, like redeveloping your neural pathways from your brain back to your core, back to your pelvic floor. How do you hold your body now that you're kind of in new mom body? Like, it's like you had like your belly was like a nice firm balloon, and then it's like deflated a little bit. What's happening in there? And it's like, there's so much that can be done. Yeah.
That's the word that popped in my head when you just described that, as like, you feel just like boggy. You're so boggy in the postpartum period. It's a vast like shift from being this taut, cute basketball belly to like, everything's just like, and it's an adjustment for sure. Well, thank you for that. And I know you're super passionate about it. And that's why I'm incorporating pelvic floor stuff into my programs. And I've talked to you about, coming in to help with that, because this is so important. And you're right, so many people don't know about this, and you find out when you're forced to find out, for the most part.
And Stephanie said how many months until you went for pelvic floor?
It was at least 6 months.
Yeah.
And
So
I suffered. It was rough.
and you might have had to figure that on your own. Like, doctors don't always tell people. Sometimes it's like you just start finding like Facebook groups or people, and you're asking questions, and then all of a sudden you find like,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people don't find it till like 7 years down the road, or until they start like going for runs, like a run, and they're like, what's happening? Or people think like, oh, I just like, I leaked because I laughed and I leaked, and everyone does that. That's normal, or that's like whatever. And yeah, so that's why I like people coming in before, when they're pregnant, because they know like, okay, I'm going to call you up like 2 weeks postpartum when we're chatting, and I'm going to see like, this is what's going on with me. When can I come in? And like, let's get this started now. Just gaining that awareness ahead of time is so nice to know like what to do, when to call, you're going to be okay. Like that kind of thing. It's like,
yeah, you're right. It could happen if you don't take care of it early on. It could be years, even decades. My mother-in-law just had surgery, reconstructive surgery. With her, she had a bladder prolapse, but that's all related. Pelvic floor, she's had 4 kids. And my moderator for our Facebook group, and for our calls, for most of our calls, she had reconstructive surgery also. It's so common in middle-aged women, and they didn't, because this wasn't around back then at all, right? So hopefully our generation won't have to deal with that, and that's like something of the past. But pelvic floor is a way bigger deal than most people know. Thank you for that. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next question. We'll go with Julie. Julie, what was your breastfeeding experience?
So this, I was thinking about this because I know so many people struggle. I actually had quite a positive breastfeeding experience. And I kind of want to, it goes back to the mindset thing. So the one thing I will say, like my mom, it's funny, like we're talking about pelvic floor, and I'm now shooting all over the place, but basically she wanted me to have a C-section so that when I was 65, I wouldn't pee in my pants. That was like her mindset. And I was like, I'm not having a C-section if I can help it. Just so anyway, so that's like her mentality as like a, 60-year-old, that generation of moms, and knowing that friends are like peeing in their pants and all that kind of stuff. But she was actually really helpful with the breastfeeding thing, because she said to me, I never really had an issue. It like kind of was not a big deal, and I had a lot of milk, and I could feed all the other babies and all this kind of stuff. And she said that to me my whole life. And the reason I bring that up is because I think I kind of embodied that as a mindset. So like, I think she could have just as easily affected my experience if she'd said something negative about breastfeeding, because you expect, like how Stephanie was saying, she expected to have postpartum depression because that's what her mom had. And I think it's just powerful how, especially when it's your first baby and you don't have anything to kind of, you have nothing to draw on, you kind of absorb everything that people are saying to you. And so protecting that energy around what people are saying can really affect whether you have a positive or negative experience. So for me, breastfeeding was, I feel like it was one of the more straightforward things for me. Whereas like, it's not like other things were like sleeping. I was very like, I don't know what was going on. I couldn't get my baby to sleep, all this kind of stuff. But I think for breastfeeding, I think it started because I had a good expectation, or I just didn't have a negative. I wasn't going in there thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard. Everyone struggles, because I know that is the narrative that a lot of people talk about. And it's true. I don't want to be insensitive to people that do struggle with breastfeeding, but I also don't want to misrepresent that it can be like, I don't know, it can be positive, let's just say that. And I enjoy breastfeeding to the point, and I think my children enjoyed it a bit too much, to the point where it was very hard to like wean them. So, and like I found with my first son, who's now 6.5, like I had to have another baby to know that to like be like, okay, you can't do this anymore, because I need to feed the next baby and I don't want you to get jealous. And he was like, yeah, it was hard for me to stop to like put boundaries in place. So from that perspective, that was challenging. But yeah, overall, I feel like I had a positive breastfeeding experience. I was able to feed my babies and provide enough milk for them. And that was really, I'm very grateful for that. Take whatever win I can get,
That's so great, Julie. I'm glad breastfeeding was so, it takes both, because you could be like ready and in a good mindset, and the baby isn't.
Right. Yeah, I was
That's
fortunate. Right.
natural reflex for them, but they still need to learn how to get a good latch. And so,
Right.
and every baby, it's different.
Right.
Right. I'm glad you had a great experience, and
Yeah.
that wasn't one of your challenges in the postpartum period.
Yeah. The one thing I would say though, that if now having experienced this, I feel like for moms, if they are struggling like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and they just think it's supposed to be this hard, I think we just don't have the insight like to ask for help, because like the pelvic floor thing, we are not in the US, at least there's not great follow-up care for moms, and so you just think it's supposed to be hard, and there's no lactation consultant often like really being there, breathing down your neck to really help you. And so I think if your gut is saying something's wrong, or this baby's not latching, or maybe my baby has a tongue tie or something like that, it would hurt so much, it's so painful, like that is not how it should be. And I feel like people need to be asking for help. And unfortunately, I think as a mom, you're almost the one that has to advocate for yourself. There's not a lot of people advocating for you, even at your most vulnerable time. So like for me, what I learned with breastfeeding is if it's not going well, if it's still really painful after like week 1, week 2, week 3, that you need to ask for help for sure.
Yeah. The thing with breastfeeding is you won't even last 2 or 3 weeks if you have a nipple injury. So it's easier to just quit and like switch to formula, because it's so readily available, which is fine if that is the plan, right? But I feel for the moms who have to quit breastfeeding early because they couldn't get the latch, or they had a nipple injury, right? Like, and they early enough. But yeah, definitely seeking help. You won't go 6 months with like the pelvic floor thing.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's the thing, like formula, it is very easily available and very acceptable, culturally acceptable. And sometimes I feel like we don't, I want to support moms so that they don't give up, but yeah, so they don't give up so easily, because if you have a desire to breastfeed and it's something that's going to fit in with your family and everything, like you should have everything at your fingertips to really help that happen for you, at least for a little bit of time, whatever that is for you. It's so personal.
Right. Thanks, Julie.
Yeah.
All right, Stephanie, what was your breastfeeding experience, Stephanie?
Yeah, so it's funny, Julie talked about her mom's expectations or feelings about breastfeeding and milk and all of those things, and that played into mine as well, where actually my mom, breasts are so sexualized in our society, right? And my mom, even, like, she never tried to breastfeed me because for her, breasts were like a sexual part of her, and she was like, I didn't even want to go there. So that was and formula, I feel like, was having was in the 80s, it was like, I don't know. So she didn't try. And I felt like, again, well, if my mom couldn't breastfeed me, and like, yeah, my breasts are a sexual part of my life too, then I don't know, like, am I going to be able to do that? Like, I didn't know, like, I was scared, right? If like, what, like, are you going to feel I was scared nursing my baby. Am I going to feel something in my body that I shouldn't feel because I'm with my child? I mean, I think that's when it's a part of your body there's so much duality there, that really got in my head. And then, but I told myself, I was like, I'm definitely going to try. I really want to give it a go. And I did. And it came really naturally. It felt like the right thing for me and for my son and for my family. I won't say it wasn't without pain at times. And then even when you nail it and you've got it down, little other things can happen, like something called blebs. It's like a blister on your nipple, and you look things up when you start feeling like this can't be right. This doesn't feel good. But overall, I ended up nursing my first son until he was like 18 or 19 months, I think. And I had been ready to stop at about a year, but the pandemic hit and I was like, I just want to give him like any good, like immunity, all the good stuff I can, antibodies. And that was a challenge weaning him as well. That was really tough. He never took a bottle. And we tried starting 2 months in, I think, 6 weeks to 8 weeks old, never took a bottle. So that was really hard. And I consider that a part of the breastfeeding experience with him, because then I couldn't, no one else could feed him for a long time. And that took a lot out of me, but him being my only son, I was happy to do it. And then with my second child, like I mentioned at the beginning, he had severe reflux and milk protein allergy. So I only nursed him for 6 weeks. It was around 4 weeks that I cut all milk protein out of my diet. We were just trying to figure out like all the different ways to help him. And with milk protein, they tell you like it's 2 weeks. You have to wait 2 weeks before you even know if it's going to help. So you cut everything out of your diet, you keep breastfeeding. And then in 2 weeks, they might start getting better. And he didn't. And I felt at such a loss, and I was starting to go downhill at that point already, psychologically, mentally. And so my biggest thing then was I want my child to feel comfortable and not be crying and in pain all the time. And so I felt like I'll do anything that will get him there as quickly as possible. So we had to go through a few formulas, and we had to settle on a very, very expensive hypoallergenic formula for the first several months of his life. But he took to it quickly, and it made a difference. And so for me, I was like, great, I got 6 weeks in of breastfeeding. I don't need to keep doing this. Like, as long as he is healthy, gaining weight, then I'm happy. So it was very different in both cases, because I figured the second time around I would breastfeed for, a year, 6 months to a year. That was kind of like, those were the goals I had sort of set for myself. And so I think it's just important too, to like, think about what you desire, what you hope to have in your life with your baby, but then also be willing to be open to shift and change, because that's the thing in motherhood. Of course, like, we can't plan for everything, and you don't really know what's going to happen. And every child and every mother, every experience you have as a mom is going to be different, hormonally, emotionally, all of the things. And so if you can just stay open and know that if you are doing your best to take care of yourself and your baby and nourish and nurture each of you, that's the best that you can do. And so, it was interesting to have both completely different experiences in each case.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Stephanie. 100%. Got to be flexible. Yeah. Okay, Ashley, what was your breastfeeding experience?
So I'm like trying to think back. It seems like so long ago, but I have to say, this is weird, but when people talk about breastfeeding, I swear my breasts are like tingly, and it's like, just saying, like,
The thing, I think.
Still happens. They're 9 and 10. And I'm like, what's that? They're like, you're talking about me and your whole experience. So just in case sorry guys, there's always like TMI with me. So, I guess that's the pelvic floor PT in me. And anyways, I did breastfeed both of my babies. My first one, if you heard in the beginning, like, I was very clueless about amount of spit up. Like, we were fine with latch. We're pretty good with latch. I was very minimal discomfort. I might have blocked out moments that were actually quite challenging. I did cry quite a few times. My husband did mention, why don't we do formula? And I was like, ew, because like, I had in my head, like, I am breastfeeding. It's going to work. Everything's going to be perfect. Anyways, but it went pretty well. But my first one, she nursed for hours and then would have like projectile spit up. And I'm like, oh, okay, good burp, thinking that's normal. And then like nursing her again. And it was like nursing her to go to bed. She wouldn't go to bed. Why don't you just suck on my nipple all day? And it was like, she was just sucking on me all day, which probably would make most people stop. But I guess I'm like so stubborn and I have pretty tough, like, again, I thought I had good pain tolerance until my perineal tear, but like, I was pretty tough. I was like, I don't care. My nipples can bleed. Whatever happens, I'm still nursing. Like it's happening. And I did. And I did go and see like a breastfeeding specialist who is amazing in my area. I went to like a nursing circle and she helped me a little with the latch, but I got through any of the little bumps that happened. But for me, like, I just let her like suck all day because I didn't know how to have her not cry. But I still enjoyed our time together, but we had a lot of time together. So, and I also pumped and I was not a great pumper. And again, it was probably because I wasn't eating or drinking enough. So I wasn't like giving myself enough calories to take care of myself. So for those of you looking for, wanting to be feeding another baby from your body, you need to have enough hydration and nutrients for you and to share. And that wasn't even a thought in my mind of like, why, maybe that was why she was nursing so much, but I also didn't realize projectile spit up is not what babies should be doing. And I didn't know that until I had my second, who would nurse for 20 minutes and then hang out a little bit. And then I put her in her crib and she'd go to bed, like no problem. And I was like, I thought babies cry all day. I thought babies suck on your nipple all day. Like, I wish I had the first one first, so the second one, I would have been like, something's wrong here. I thought something was wrong with my second one who slept like 10 hours in the hospital and they tried to like wake her up. And I was like, don't touch my baby. She will wake up when she's hungry, because my first one never slept. The nurses wouldn't take her because they're like, she's crying the whole time. Two very different. It's amazing. Like Stephanie, you said, like you can have two babies from the same people and the experiences are completely different. So I breastfed my first one until 7 months. And then I was back at work and I was pumping for an hour at my lunch break while taking notes. And it was a full hour of pumping and I get like half an ounce and like an ounce. And I'm like, what the is happening? My supply was like not great. I was pumping in my car ride there and back and like, yeah. And long story short, I was pregnant with my next one, my second. So again, not having enough food for me to feed a baby and then to grow a baby. So man, like nutrients and hydration, so important. And then finding somebody way more knowledgeable than you in an area that, you are probably not knowledgeable in, like learn from them, like take the fast track. Like I took the slow track because I figured I didn't know anything for the first one. And then it's like hindsight is 2020. Like now I see because I'm on baby 2 and that was baby 1 experience. So, definitely go for the fast track, learn from anybody and everyone that's like a professional and like an expert in that area, to help you so that, your experience is easier and you can like find things quicker. Like if I would have known my projectile spit up was not normal, even though the doctors asked about spit up, I'm like, yeah, spit up, normal. Like, it's like, they ask you the question on the questionnaire, but they don't like ask you, like sit down and like paint the picture of your day. Like, I wish somebody did that and was like, let's walk through the whole thing. And then like be able to help me out with the different things that were going on. Sorry, I go like a little bit everywhere because it brings up a new idea. So
That's a really good point. When you're a first-time mom, you don't really know what's normal and not normal, right? So you can go 6 months and not realize that, oh, it's not normal. And if you're not talking to people who know what's normal or not normal, you'll just keep going along on your, probably not merry way, but it's yeah, it's you'll don't wait for something really bad to happen to help.
Yeah.
Right.
My coach always tells me, we all do the best we can at any given time with the resources we have. And I don't think I had the resources to know. So I was doing the best I could, but I didn't have those resources,
Yeah, I feel like it's our culture here, right? Like pregnant moms aren't told these things. They're like they're told to buy the best stroller and car seat and do all the fun things, and then lights out right after, because then you're all alone figuring things out. So it's definitely a misappropriation of resources. Like I just shared yesterday in the workshop, we in 2021 baby products revenue was $6.3 billion. With that amount of money, don't like postpartum should be a little easier for the most part. If where are we putting our money? It's like in things when we could be using it to get more prepared or more knowledgeable about things like this. Kind of, it's a whole thing that needs to be changed and shifted for sure. All right, well, I'm going to go back to Julie. Julie, last question, and then we have actually, let's have you go last, because then Kelsey has a question for you, so you can wrap up the session. Are you guys good? I know I said it was going to be about an hour. Can you guys stay for the last question? Okay, cool. All right, I'll go with Stephanie. So Stephanie, what would you do differently preparing for your first baby, knowing what you know now?
So funny, I really didn't prepare at all for my first baby. I kind of like told myself, and I think I've talked to you a little bit about this, Callista, of just like, I'm going to go with the flow, kind of like Ashley said. And for me, I could be an anxious person. If when I prepare, I can tend to hyper focus and over prepare. And so I already felt nervous about birth, and I just was like, I'm just gonna like figure it out as I go. And honestly, that in many ways served me. Like, I think know yourself and what makes you feel most secure, most confident, most self-assured going forward, and follow that as much as you can. However, I really I will always go back to the pelvic floor. I just wish that I had known to prepare my body, because I do feel like, every baby's going to be different. And again, hormonally after each child, we're going to feel so different. And so it's so good to have an arsenal of resources that you can pull from, and things to look at. But I also think it was good I didn't go down too many rabbit holes preparing for this type of baby or this type of postpartum experience, when you just don't know what it's going to look like. But I think there are certain things that no matter what happens, it's going to be important to prepare in those ways. And the pelvic floor is one that I'm like, you can't go wrong. That's not a waste of your time. If it's like that part of your anatomy, even with a C-section, the way that your body is shifting and the way that you're carrying your weight when you're holding a child in your body for that long, your pelvic floor still has some strain on it. So that's what I would have done differently. And then I think too, this actually was bigger with my second child. I think it depends on your support network and your community. But with our second child, nobody gave us anything. One person, I think, gave us an Uber Eats gift card. One person might have brought food over. I don't know. But I think everyone's like, oh, they've got this. They have 2 kids now. That's when we really needed way more help than we did with our first. My husband didn't have big paternity leave. So I would just how much time does your partner get off? How much time do you get off? Who lives around you? And if no one's going to do it for you, it's really hard. But I think so many moms, Julie and Ashley and Callista, have all hinted at this throughout this evening, of you have to advocate for yourself. Unfortunately, there are people out there who will help support you and advocate for you, but it's never a bad idea to like prepare and advocate for yourself. And I think, I've heard of postpartum doulas encouraging women to like make a spreadsheet or like send some emails out like, hey, we're going to need some help with these things postpartum, or this is when you can come and visit the baby, and even leaving a note on your door for the people that might well-meaning drop by food, but you don't know if you're going to have the energy to come down and be clothed and have people into your home, and just putting a note on the door that says like, if you're bringing food, thanks so much, leave it here. We don't know if we're dressed, or like, you don't know what's happening. So just providing a safe space for yourself, whatever that's going to look like for you, so that you can rest and eat and hydrate and all of those things.
So good. That's so true, Stephanie. I talk a lot about that. I have a bonus for the workshop, how to set loving boundaries. And that's one of them, is like the visitation. Because even if I wanted, like I plan on like, oh yeah, come over. And then I just start talking and it's like 3 hours later. It's like, oh, I'm exhausted now. So yeah, definitely lots to learn. All right. Ashley, what would you do differently knowing what you know now the first time around?
Probably a lot of things. Let's see. Number one, I would hire a night nurse so I could sleep and they could bring the baby to me and like change the diaper and put the baby back to bed, and I could get some sleep. And I'd probably figure out who else could help me and hire some more help, whether like for my second one, I had a mama's helper, just so, because I was scared to death of having a second one and caring for a like a crawling baby that was attached to my breast all day. So I was like, how do I do this with another one? So I hired help for that, and it was a game changer. So if it was a first, but for a first, I just so I could shower and sleep, even if it's a few hours a day, somebody to come and help take care of the baby so I could have some me time. Because I didn't think me time was important. I thought it was like, so I think that is something that I would 100% do differently. I have a friend who had a night nurse for her second, and I've never seen a mom so well rested and energized in my life. And she has twin boys who she had before. So she still was caring for twin boys and was like, hey, looks like I just had a baby the other day, and like was out like literally 2 days later, like no bags under their eyes, totally fine. I'm like, oh, this is what it's like when you have a tribe. This is why people were in tribes, and like everyone shared and like caring for each other and their babies. And I feel like I would have like developed some type of a tribe, because I didn't have one in terms of like friends in the area. And even though you might have friends in the area, they might not help or know how to help. So again, somehow develop like a plan and a tribe, whether it's professionals or people who would like to help but don't know how, and like set that up in a way that could, have helped the postpartum be less of like survival and more thrive.
1,000% echo all that. All right, Julie, what would you do differently knowing everything you know now?
I often kind of like joke with myself. I wish I could take number 3, like how I treated number 3 and make it number 1. Like I wish I could take what I knew from how I was with the third baby and have that as the first baby, but that's like never going to happen, right? Because it's chicken and egg. Like you can never know what it's like until you know what it's like. So I had to go through 1 and 2 to get to 3. But anyway, I think the first thing is like to be kinder to myself. I think I was very critical. Like I tend to go into that kind of hypercritical of myself. And that doesn't serve anybody. Like we're all just doing our best. And with that said as well, like I think my husband, if I didn't feel like I knew a lot about babies, I mean, he definitely didn't know anything about babies. So I think some of the times he didn't really even know how to help me. And I don't know if I was very accepting of help, or nice to be around. Like, we're all just stressed. And as I said, like my family came to visit when my son was, I think, 3 weeks old. So we had a little bit of like pops of help here and there, but it was basically us. And I think in the beginning, my husband was like, I can't feed the baby. I don't know what to do. So, you feel a little bit alone. And I think had I like more lovingly advocated for that, or had we been more prepared, maybe that would have been a bit smoother. The other thing I wished I'd had, not as much for number 2 and number 3, but like for number 1, I really wanted to have a unmedicated vaginal birth, like as normal a birth as possible, but in a hospital. I only wanted to have a baby in a hospital because my husband wanted a baby in a hospital, in case something goes wrong. I would have had a baby in the woods kind of thing. I didn't want anybody around, like, but because I wanted that, I didn't end up really having that. I ended up having an epidural, and then I had like complications after my first birth. Like having a doula, a birth coach, someone to help me, because I really didn't know. I really was naive as to that experience, and like birth and stuff is something very specific. We can talk about it another point, but I think having some kind of birth coach or mom coach, so invaluable. You don't know what you don't know. Like that's what you always say. And it's like, yeah, I think that would really just help. We don't need to struggle so much. Like, I think it's so much of a struggle, and it's like you're bearing this badge of honor that you're doing this by yourself. And like, no one's giving out prizes. Like I'm still waiting for my prize money of like doing this by myself. No one cares. Everyone's in their own little bubble, and they're very focused on themselves, unless you tell them or ask them, or, and if it means hiring people because you don't have your tribe and your village, so be it. That is your journey, which we can talk about in a second. But yeah, I think asking for help, being kind to yourself, just knowing it's a phase. If your house is not perfectly clean and all that kind of stuff, it's okay. It'll eventually be there, or you hire someone to help you clean or something. Yeah.
Well, Kelsey asked this question directly to you,
Yeah.
Julie, and you kind of answered it, but do you have anything to add? She says she'd love to hear about your experience having a baby away from family and any advice, because she's about to be on the same boat.
Yeah. So, oh man, this is tough. Like I think it was Ashley who was it? It was either Ashley or Stephanie who mentioned talking about, you go away, maybe you go away for college, and then you end up marrying somebody from an area, or you settle down on somebody, and then you're away from your home, and then you're like, oh great, let's have a baby. And I don't think we appreciate that is not really how nature intended it to be. So like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think it's hard, but again, it's about mindset. I think something I struggled with was like looking at other people having their moms, and the grandma was always there, and the auntie and everything, and like, and then they're still kind of complaining about motherhood, or I mean, it's hard regardless. And then you don't have the help that you kind of feel like you're owed in a way, like it's supposed to be like this, and you don't have this, but that was your choice. It's all about choice, right? It's always a choice to have a baby and have a family in this situation where you don't have help. That being said, like there are lots of help comes in so many different ways, whether that is your partner being, really being on board with you. Like we've spoken a lot about, as moms, we've taken on a lot of the caring for this baby on our own, and there is a second person in this relationship, and I think sometimes we don't utilize that enough, or maybe we don't include them enough. So really making it more of like a 50, like as much as you can, like a 50-50 partnership, getting help if you can, like through friends, or meeting like an online community, and then maybe there's someone in your area, because unfortunately, like as wonderful as online communities are, that's not, an online person on Instagram cannot hold your baby while you shower or whatever like that. I think having the mindset that this adds another layer, but it's also an adventure, an opportunity. It's a way it forces you to meet other people, because now you need to develop your own community. And then the other thing is, when you do see your family, it is such an incredible experience, because you really appreciate them, because you don't have them around all the time. The other thing that was like a sidebar of me being away from my family is that I wasn't afraid to travel with my baby, because like, like I had no choice. I didn't have no choice, but like if I didn't go and see my parents or my family, like then we wouldn't they wouldn't get to see my kids. And so I think that was a really beautiful thing, like ripped off the band-aid of travel because I didn't have time to think about it. I was just like, well, gotta go do this 25-hour flight or whatever it is. And, whereas if you don't have to do that kind of stuff, people are very hesitant to travel. And yeah, I think just trying to develop some kind of village before you have the baby is going to be really helpful. You do have to rely on friends more when you don't have your inbuilt safety net of like grandma, and also one thing is it's not always like family members are not always going to want to care for your baby. You might also like butt heads as like, who's the boss? Like, how many moms can you have? And sometimes when it's you caring for your baby, it's like, it's really your experience. And sometimes it can be a good thing not to like have your parents or your in-laws or whatever looking after your child, and maybe they do things differently to the way you want to do it. So trying to focus on the positives is very helpful because you often can't change your situation. So yeah, I think being in communities like this as well, really good.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of you. But before we wrap up, can you just tell people, all the mamas in the workshop, how they can find you if they're wanting to follow you and get in touch? Did you hear me? Hi. How can people find you, Julie?
So I think the easiest way to find me is on Instagram. So my handle is Julie Fernandez Co, because Julie Fernandez was taken. Otherwise, I have a podcast that you can find on Spotify called The Beanbag Cafe. And but connect with me on Instagram. That's probably the easiest, and we can chat more. And I would love to hear from everyone. Yeah.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah.
Stephanie, how can people find you?
I'm going to pop my Instagram here in the chat. It's my name, Stephanie Traska, and littlescrapsofmagic.com is my website. So you can follow me there, but I'm very active on Instagram. So that's where I would go. And I do have newsletters I send out too, but again, Instagram, you find everything there.
You do love Instagram. I want to love it as much as you.
It's like becoming less of a loving relationship with the reels, like I just feel like it's overstimulating sometimes now when I go on there, and I'm resisting TikTok, but I'm just kind of plugging along, showing up the way I always like to, but it's a good way to connect.
Yeah, it is. All right. Thank you so much for being here, Stephanie. And Ashley, how can people find you?
Yeah. Same Instagram. It's at Ashley Hocutt. It's HOCUTT. And then from there, you can go to my physical therapy website if you're interested in learning more about that. And my YouTube channel. You can go to it also from Instagram. So just go to Instagram and find all the things. It's easiest.
Okay. Thank you, my experienced mamas. I appreciate your time, and you guys, I knew you were going to drop some golden nuggets, and thank you for dropping them. And also just sharing all the uglies that people don't get to hear. It's so valuable. I'm telling you, mind blown, right? Even I, as a mom of three, even hearing your experiences, I'm like, I didn't know that, for the most part, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words, but thank you, my experienced mamas, and thank you, my workshop mamas, for tuning in, and to all those catching the replay. Let us know if you have any more questions. You can DM these ladies on Instagram, like they said, or if you have any questions in the workshop, I can get you some answers if I don't have them myself. All right, you guys have a great night. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. This was lovely.
So fun. We should do it every week.
Yes, thank you, Calista.
Bye.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great night.
You too.